Hey guys, welcome back. Today on The Untitled Artist, I'll be showing you how to create a fishtail braid hairstyle for a flower fairy. This is a hairstyle I did on my December 2020 flower fairy. It turned out really beautiful. I asked you guys if you wanted a more detailed step-by-step tutorial on how to create this hairstyle, and many of you reached out to me, so thank you for the request. I will break this down in very easy to follow steps. This is also the same hairstyle I used on the February Amethyst fairy. So it's really pretty, kind of reminds me of Game of Thrones or like a Viking hairstyle. It's super princessy. It looks really difficult. It is time consuming, but once you master a few steps, it's really easy to put together. So let's grab some supplies and get started. Obviously, you'll need a fairy. If you're new to making flower fairies, you'll want to check out my basic flower fairy tutorial where I teach you how to take a wooden bead, some floral wire, and some embroidery floss for the skin and the hair and twist it into this beautiful little doll. The basic tutorial will break down all of these steps and teach you the basics of creating your flower fairy. I recently did a tutorial on different skin tones that I will link below. So if you want to give your fairy a different skin tone, there's a tutorial that will take you through different types of skin tones. And I also have a lot of other hairstyle tutorials, so be sure and check those out as well. I have some little poly bands that are going to help us create this hairstyle. I've got a sharp pair of scissors and of course my trusty glue gun set on low. And then I dressed my doll already in this really pretty purpley blue thread. I will link that below. I saw this flower at Michael's craft store and knew I had to make a fairy with it. It's so pretty. I love the pink and the green in it, and it's just such a gorgeous flower. So I picked the blue thread to match that. Okay, let's get started. So the first step is to start smoothing out your thread, and if you have a piece hanging down, go ahead and cut that off. And then we're going to flip her over, so we're working on the back side of the doll. And I'm going to push the bead down and add a dab of glue right at the top where the thread meets the bead. This is going to help to hold her hair in place. And then go ahead and push the bead up, and I hold it for a minute until that glue sets. And then I flip her back to the front, and I'm going to decide where I want her hair to part. So you can have it part right where the wire is. I kind of like to give her a side part, and then you're going to continue smoothing out that thread. So just gently pulling on it. I like to pull it between my two fingers and get it nice and smooth. So she's got a side part. One tip, if you have a hair color and you want to and you can see the wire at the top of her head, you can take a marker that matches the hair color and just draw it on top of that little piece of the wire that you see, and it's a great way to hide the wire. So you can see she's kind of got a side part. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip her back over again, and we're going to secure the hair down. We're going to eventually pull it over to the side. So I'm going to, you can see it's nice and smooth. I'm going to pull it up on the one side, add a dab of glue, and then gently pull the thread back down. And that's just going to barely attach it on the side of her head. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So you can see I'm constantly smoothing out the thread. Push that down, and then I'm going to flip her over, and we're going to add one more dab of glue right in the back in the middle. And then continue to smooth it down. So you can see I've pulled it over to the side a little bit, and I'm continuing to smooth it as I go. And I decide which side I want it to go to. I decided to have it be on the left, and then I'm gonna grab my poly band, and I'm only wrapping this around once. This isn't meant to hold her hair completely. It's just meant to kind of hold it in place while we're working on it. We will take this off at the very end, but it just helps to, it makes it easier to do your fishtail braid if it's kind of held together there. One really good tip is at this point, dress your doll. It'll make it a lot easier to do the braid. You will find more detailed instructions on how to dress your fairy doll in that basic fairy tutorial. But this enables us to spread her legs apart into the splits and set her upright, and it makes it a lot easier to create this hairstyle because she isn't moving around quite as much. It helps to stabilize her. Then what I did is I trimmed off the ends, and I split the hair in half. Now we're going to start our fishtail braid. So I'm going to grab Starting on the left, I'm going to grab about 3 strands of thread and I'm going to pull it from the left to the right. And then I'm going to grab about 3 strands on the right and I'm grabbing from the outside of the hair and I'm going to pull it to the left. And it's good to hold that thread firmly with both hands. And then I'm just going to keep doing this back and forth. So grabbing about 3 strands from the outside and pulling them over to the opposite side, back and forth. Once again, a few strands from the right side and pulling it over to the left side. Now, another thing to keep in mind, I am using about 3 strands of the thread to pull back and forth. If you do want this braid to go faster, you can grab bigger sections of hair. So maybe grab like 5 or 6 strands of the embroidery floss. And you're just going to keep doing this back and forth. And at first it doesn't look like much, but after you've got maybe 1/4 of an inch braided, you'll start to see this beautiful intricate pattern of your fishtail braid. So just going back and forth and back and forth. As I'm braiding, every once in a while, I will flip her to the front to make sure the hair also looks good in the front. And you just keep going back and forth and back and forth. So here's a close-up of what your braid should look like at this point. And you can see that that elastic is just kind of holding the hair a little bit to help keep it all in place. And then you guessed it, just keep braiding. You can braid down as far as you like. Just keep going back and forth, and I try and make sure that the sections I'm pulling back and forth are even. So I make sure I'm grabbing from the outside and I'm grabbing about 3 strands at a time. I think it would also be fun to add some colored thread into this, maybe a few strands of a color that might match her dress. Would be really pretty to kind of add some color. And you can see this hairstyle is a bit time consuming, but it's not super difficult, and the end result is so pretty that I think it's just worth it. And you notice I'm constantly turning her to the front to see how it looks. And then when I get to a point where I feel like I'm getting close to being finished with the braid, I will pull the braid to the front and see if I like where it's laying, because we will be pulling this braid to the front. It won't stay in the back. And you can see that gorgeous fishtail braid. Then I'm going to grab another elastic and I'm going to wrap it around twice around the bottom of the braid. Once again, we're going to be cutting this off. This is just to help keep things in place. There, I cut the elastic that was at the top. And if you need to go back and add a little dab of glue to hold that braid down a little bit, you can. And here's a close-up of what the braid should look like. So you've got this beautiful, intricate braid. Now I'm going to grab some thread and tie off the bottom. So this is the same thread I used to dress my doll. And I'm just going to tie it in a double knot in the front and on the back side of the braid a few times to make sure it's really secure. And you can also add a small dab of glue to the knot to keep it in place. So I just tie that off and then I'm going to trim off the ends. You could also leave those ends and just combine them in with her hair, which I also think is a really pretty look. So instead of trimming those off, you just make them part of the end of her braid. Then we're going to smooth down the thread and trim off the scraggly ends. My biggest tip for this part is go slow. Like, you can always cut more off, but if you get it too short, it's super sad because you spent so long making this beautiful braid and you don't want a weird little stubby end. So once you have it, the ends trimmed to the length you like, you're going to go back and cut that little piece of elastic out from the bottom. And you're going to, I went back and just trimmed up those ends a little bit more. And that's it, guys. We're all set. What do you think? I hope you love this braid as much as I do. I've also been thinking of doing a rope braid, so if that's something you'd like to see in more detail, please let me know. I know it's a hairstyle I've used quite a bit on my fairies, but if you want me to break that down better and easier to follow steps, let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love hearing from you. I love your suggestions. Please let me know what other videos you'd like. If you haven't subscribed, please do. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to share your fairies, you can do that with the hashtag #UntidedArtistFairyDoll on Instagram and follow along on Instagram. Thanks, you guys. We'll see you next time.